and welcome to the Voices of Santa Barbara radio program. I'm your host, Michael Self, inviting you to stay tuned to today's conversation with my good friend, family member, all-around good guy and pharmacist and doctor is Paul Sullivan. In fact, I've had him on many times, and so it's kind of the Paul and Michael show. And I bring him on regularly because he is such a wealth of information, things that I think you in general and specifically will be interested in for your health and just general knowledge. He's studies all the time. Many people would be retired and living in the Bahamas or Santa Barbara comfortably, but he's got this passion and he just keeps on going. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah,
I keep studying because I'm allowed to buy 12 books at a time, and then I have to work through them before I can buy any more books. So
okay.
That's
Let me
that's
see,
what
is that
keeps
a dictate from the housemaster?
It is, yes.
Well, I think you probably have some points, too, that she must adhere to, right?
I can't remember what those are, but I'm sure they're somewhere in the...
Well, I know you well enough.
We just got our 55th anniversary last week, so
yes.
that means that we must be listening to each other.
Yes. That's good. But anyway, we'll just leave that aside. You're a good match, and it's wonderful that you have this passion. And so one of the things we're hearing a lot about lately is CBD.
Right, it's...
CBD.
Yeah, for short for cannabidiol. I have, in my past, my career has kind of evolved from, say, pharmacy and medicine side into nutrition and fitness over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. But the last 3 years, continually seeking better outcomes for health, to optimize health, just not do symptom suppression like most prescriptions do. So I'm looking on how to cure or how to optimize health, and have really come about increasing knowledge the last 3 years in the endocannabinoid system in particular. We'll call it the ECS here for short. Okay. And, of course, the CBD from hemp as opposed to marijuana. So
does is that oil also in marijuana, or is
it is, but it's actually the inverse. If you took a full glass of water and you were looking at marijuana, you would have CBD would have like the bottom half inch, and theoretically THC, or the psychoactive cannabinoid, would be the rest of the 95%. In hemp, it's the inverse.
Okay.
The identification of hemp means no more than 0.3% THC, and the rest could be other cannabinoids, primarily CBD. So that half inch at the bottom of a full glass then, or less than a half inch in this case, would be the THC. So you're not allowed to have anything more than 0.3% THC to be classified as hemp.
Okay, they're the same variety of plant?
Same cannabis sativa, yes.
Right. But
very different.
Very different.
And never should have been combined. The FDA combined them back in the late 70s and treated them as a Schedule 5 drug along with marijuana or cannabis. And they only separated it here. Thankfully, President Trump did it on December 20th in the Farm Bill, where he split hemp off from marijuana and classified them as different. So
right, because
we're looking for that.
When I think of hemp, I think of fabric.
Oh, yeah, and fiber and paper and even protein. It's been used for years, for many other substances. It's just gotten a bad rap for the wrong reasons with this special scheduling of drugs is the way they're controlling the cannabinoids that come from hemp, which are extremely beneficial for health.
This is something that, I'm of the hippie age, never had pot, never wore a mini skirt. I was just so not into it. But being interested in herbs and medicines, I always felt disappointed that because of the political issues that it wasn't being studied.
That's true. And there was some abuse, and in some cases you've seen the medicinal THC or medicinal cannabis be legalized in many states now and increasing as we speak. There might be another one or two on board. I know Nebraska was looking at it. And,
okay.
I think Ohio and Texas now is looking at CBD, allowing CBD or hemp to be grown in Texas. So it's expanding quickly. But there are some medicinal benefits to THC in cannabis, a tetrahydrocannabinoid.
Stress relief?
Well, yeah, that's one. It's basically they're finding it useful in some seizure combinations with CBD, as well as some other prescriptive kind of pain relief. And there's even some cancer research going on with it.
Okay.
So, but in combination, often with CBD being the higher element, like 5-1, 10-1, 18-1 CBD to THC. If there's any THC, it's usually the CBD is the most valuable cannabinoid in my view.
Okay. Now, I know that you've had a long history of, I'm going to call it formulating, putting together X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, close to 1,200 formulas.
You're right. Well, and that you've won international awards for doing that, and that one of the things I'd like people to know about you are a pharmacist, but seeing people come in and getting the pharmaceuticals, your curious mind said, what can we do to prevent people from needing these pharmaceuticals? And I think, as you had related to me, that's part of what drove you to get into looking at the other aspects of products, nutritional products.
Well, yeah, it's always been promoting health. And I think I'm not like an alternative medicine guy where you say, take our stuff, don't take theirs.
Right.
I say if you must take prescriptions, you have to look at what it's interacting with. You have to look at the side effects. You have to look at what nutrients are being depleted. You have to look at addictions, which is one of the reasons I got into the CBD side with the opioid addiction problems for pain. So I'm not against pharmacy or against pharma. No. We're great at treating trauma.
Right.
And we're great at treating infection. But on chronic disease, not so good. With the pharmaceuticals.
They're not good at keeping you well.
No.
If you're if I'm in an automobile accident, don't take me to the acupuncturist.
That's right.
Take me
or the
to the
guy.
hospital.
Yeah, right.
Or the nutritional store.
Yeah.
I might need that later to help build me up after catastrophe.
Exactly.
But that's not the first stop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, what got you into studying CBD?
Well, it's really seeing the kind of evolution of the science of the endocannabinoid system, which we were not taught in pharmacy school, or it's not taught in medical school, where it's the system within the body that they discovered back in actually 1992, the first two, 1988, the CB2 receptors were found. And those are receptors being kind of the lock and key, the lock being the receptor and the key being a neurotransmitter or the nutrient that unlocks that receptor and causes a specific action, a desired action. Okay. You hope.
Right.
Sometimes it's not desired.
Okay, so I'm imagining, I'm going to say a plug and a receptacle in the wall.
Right.
You've got the receptacle. You knew it can do great good because it can turn on that light or air conditioner. But you have to have the plug with the right whatever. So
when they found the CB2 receptor and CB1, they found that various cannabinoids worked on those receptors to cause certain benefits. And they found two of these endocannabinoids that are present in the body. One is AEA, which they call anandamide for short, and 2-AG, which I won't bother you with that long chemical
I see it here.
Theracream glycerol.
Oh,
And
that
there's
one.
two enzymes that keep them in balance, that have been known, the FAAH and the MAGL. Now, the one, if people say, well, I didn't know I had this system, and I didn't know I had those endocannabinoids, I didn't know I had those enzymes, but one of them is really very basic. Anandamide is a feel-good endocannabinoid. And they found one thing that drives anandamide is phenylethylamine that comes from chocolate.
Ah, that's what they say, that, those
So
ladies eating chocolate, it's to feel
so
good.
when you eat chocolate, you feel peaceful and rested maybe, or at least less stress, less anxiety. So that's one of the benefits of chocolate. Of course, you should have the low sugar or the high cocoa content over 80%, but who cares?
Right. It's
if you're feeling good.
scientifically proven.
That's right. So that's an example of an outside, which would be an exocannabinoid or something outside the body, driving an endocannabinoid, increasing its effectiveness and its the amount in the that hits the receptor site. So that's kind of an example of what then, alluding to a cannabinoid from the outside, which you call a phytocannabinoid, PHYTO, coming from plants, and how it affects the internal cannabinoid system.
Well, we just learned chocolate is good for us on a lot of things.
And a lot of letters.
And a lot of letters. But we'll just remember it's good. We don't have to know the letters. You're listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara with Michael Self at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. And we'll be back with more about the Mike and Paul show after these messages. The Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. This is your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 and Saturday at 5. And no, that was totally wrong. It's Sunday at 10. I need chocolate. My guest today is Paul Sullivan. Where that came from, I have no idea. It's the other Michael.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back, Paul. You just enlightened us, gave us a lot of hope that chocolate is good for us and improves our mood. And so let's tell us more about your studies with, I always want to say CDB. So CBD.
Cannabidiol.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a primary cannabinoid in hemp. When I say primary, there are other helpful cannabinoids. In addition to CBD, there's CBG, which is cannabigerol, CBC, cannabichrome, CBN, cannabinol, and some other minor cannabinoids. In fact, there's literally dozens of them. And there's also some other helpful ingredients in these hemp product, the flowers. They're called terpenes. And we've been using them for years for other reasons. These terpenes are really aromatic hydrocarbons, aromatic meaning you can smell them. And it's like they're essential oils, in effect. And beta-caryophyllene is one we use a lot of. And if you remember back, I'm quite a bit older than you are.
No,
back,
not really.
Well, we used clove oil for toothache.
Oh, yeah.
That has beta-caryophyllene in it, and that's the anesthetic, the anti-inflammatory, terpene, the active ingredient. So terpenes have been around for years, menthol, camphor. We have limonene that comes from citrus. Limonene happens to be very effective. It's one of the complementary terpenes in hemp that helps with anxiety and stress relief. We have beta-myrcene, pineal. Pineal is for memory and focus. That comes from pine needles and things. So all these terpenes are very helpful. And then there's flavonoids. There's 100 of these terpenes. by the way. All of them in very minor, less than 0.1% for the most part. Maybe some of the terpenes could be up to about 1%, but I want to get that across that all of these ingredients in hemp, with the exception of CBD, are fairly low in the profile, but they're all enveloped in what we call the entourage effect, and I'll get into that a little bit later, which is the whole plant and the value of having them all together.
Yeah, that makes sense, because sometimes when they take one thing out, and just because the one thing is designed to be good, it really needed that complement of the other things to be as effective as it could be.
Or some of them, anyway.
Right.
And that's the difference in proper formulation. And then the last classification of products are the flavonoids. And flavonoids are really polycyclic products that are antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. Quercetin, for example, is one of the flavonoids in hemp, and you'll find quercetin in apples. It's good in, you find it in onions, quercetin, and it's good for energy. It's good as an antioxidant. It's good for allergies. So all of these, so hemp has all these values that have been kept away from us for years, at least recognizing the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, and the value that these different ingredients bring. So the whole system works in tandem with other body systems. You say, well, I don't know. I've heard the endocrine system or the nervous system or the cardiovascular system. Well, the ECS works in tandem with these systems. This is all evolving knowledge. And now that hemp has been made legal by, said this Farm Bill back on December 20th, you'll see a lot more studies now coming out that it's legal to take, and now you're going to have researchers looking at the different values. But it's helpful in pain perception, neurotransmitter release, and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And we'll talk about those later, about how people are taking serotonin reuptake inhibitors right now to prevent or help depression.
Right.
This already drives the serotonin. You don't need these reuptake inhibitors. That's why taking these eventually could, if not replace a pharmaceutical, might allow you to lower the dose. Now, I'm saying you should work with your doctor on this, but
right.
I've seen this happen many, many times in people that I've been working with over the last 3 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't dopamine one of what they're looking at as far as helping Parkinson patients?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's catecholamine, and it actually drives L-DOPA,
right,
which helps for tremors. Yes.
And then the serotonin also is supposed to improve mood, right?
Mood, you're right, and kind of the reward system.
And then are you saying...
It helps sleep. It's also a precursor for melatonin.
But are you saying there are some things that we're doing now that are inhibiting the uptake?
Absolutely. No, I'm sorry. There is a drug class called an SSRI, Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor. So they don't want the serotonin that is, I'm going to just say ejected or injected into the synapse between near the receptor is only allowed to be there for a millisecond, a millisecond.
A flash.
And then it's swept away. And that's a natural enzyme. But what the drug does is prevent that inhibitor from the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor stops that sweeping and keeps the serotonin in the synapse a little bit longer. And therefore, it prolongs the effect of it, the antidepressant effect.
So it's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but it's a drug that has other side effects.
Right.
So this helps neurotransmitters, neuron protection, a CB2 receptor that CBD works on in the body has a lot to do with immunity and immune function. Not immunity when it comes to court cases, but the immune system in the body, inflammatory reactions, and GI activity. And all of these, you just might think of it as systems that relate to how we relax, eat, sleep, remember, or our memory, protect from inflammation and things like that. So that's the activity, that's how the ECS system works. And when it gets out of balance, leading to either overactivity or underactivity of the CB2 receptor, then it often results in an abnormality or, that reflects its balance to the above symptoms, and hence the feeling and medical conditions that reflect pain, depression, anxiety, sleep inadequacy, because we don't say that CBD puts you to sleep. A lot of people think that's true. But what CBD allows you to do is it allows you to sleep because it relieves the anxiety. A lot of people are anxious, preoccupied, can't get to sleep,
right.
Or in some cases get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and they come back and they can't get back to sleep. And it's usually anxiety that causes that. Well, the CBD works on the CB2 receptor to help relieve that anxiety.
I call it go ahead.
Sorry. It allows you to get back to sleep so that you're not laying there staring at the ceiling for 2 hours.
So it bats out the monkey mind, huh?
Right.
Well, we could all use that. You get up and you think, either did I do something or I should have done something, or come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you eat hemp blossoms?
Well, they don't release the CBD unless they're heated.
Oh, okay.
They call that's part of the extraction process.
Boil it like greens?
Well, that could work. You could. It's called decarboxylation. You have to heat it to really get the CBD released from the CBDA, the acid form.
So but
you could get some relief out of the acid alone. Yeah.
So you can grow your own little hemp plant, and when the blooms come, you could boil it and eat it?
God.
Maybe with a little lemon and olive oil.
And pasta. I've never done that.
The new cafe.
I'd have to go look that up. I can't speak.
Yeah,
speak from experience.
We'll be doing that. So anyway, how would you apply it for the best benefit?
Well, applying, you don't have to apply per se. I mean, it is available in creams. Some people put it in a pain cream, and CBD by itself, they may add a little bit of menthol or camphor or wintergreen, and that's all, because right now the CBD market is exploding. Last count, I think 700 companies have gotten into this business in the last 2 years. There's a lot of confusion at the store level as to what works and what doesn't. But if you have these other ingredients added to a topical formula, I think that they need more botanicals. There's a product formulation I've done that we've added CBD to called Theracream.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to have to take a break. And when we come back, I want you to tell us about Theracream. I think places have to be licensed, or I don't know. But anyway, you're listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara with Michael Self at KZSB AM 1290, the Santa Barbara News Press radio station. We'll be back with more about Theracream, Paul, and CBD. Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm Michael Self. This show will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 and Sunday at 10 a.m. My guest today is Paul Sullivan, and we've been talking about his formulation of CBD.
Yes.
It's so tongue-tied I am.
Yeah, just say cannabidiol then.
Okay, I'll just say that.
Or hemp extract.
Right.
Is cleaner.
Now, you were talking about a formulation you have, which is Theracream?
Yeah, we put, when I said just not menthol, camphor, and wintergreen in it.
Is that a carrier to help it get in, or does it just make it more pleasant, or why?
Well, they do create heat, but it's all real surface heat. There's no penetration with those three ingredients. The formula I did, when you said things ought to be complementary, have other essential oils, natural essential oil, the product's all natural, and natural botanicals that helped cure not cure, I'm not allowed to use that word, but relieve and help treat the pain and inflammatory response that you get from a sore joint or a muscle sprain or something like that. And it's astonishing, Michael. The onset of action is so quick. Within 5 minutes, it's if you put it on about a dime size and rub it in for 4 or 5 times, people just smear it on. I think it works. You really have to rub it in. But it is really, and it's available in town here at Skin Deep, Mary J. Mart downtown in over Montecito at the San Ysidro Pharmacy and at Montecito Grocery. That we don't have it everywhere. We kind of have it in specific places around town that can treat it properly as for skin care or as, not to call it a medicine, but it should be treated as such and given careful instructions and training about what the product is about.
So it would be in an order like you would use Bengay for a sprained muscle.
Yes, something like that. Only
it's an analgesic.
20 times more effective.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that would be what you'd use it for.
I gave a sample to a golf pro for his wife who used it for a sore hip. And I asked him about 3 days later, I said, well, if you want to buy a bottle, you can buy it here. And he says, oh, she doesn't need it anymore. She's cured. So that's how effective it is. So it's just not for treatment. It's really,
right.
I can't say cure, but it remedied her discomfort at that time.
Right. I think, and I'm not a doctor, but sometimes if you can get the inflammation calmed down, the body will kick in and do its healing.
That's right.
And
That's
then
incredible restorative.
Yeah. And so it's giving the body that rest.
Right. And it's feeding the endocannabinoid system.
Okay.
So that's really feeding the endocannabinoid, or this is a phytocannabinoid, so it's from the outside. It penetrates through the skin, and I've added various skin absorption enhancers, we call it, that help the absorption. So that's it's really effective, and that's not the only way to treat pain. I mean, with CBD, you'll see in some stores things like lotions, tinctures, soft gels, which are capsules, chews, and you don't often see suppositories, but as a pharmacist, I've made those as well. It was for a doctor whose patient had prostate cancer, quite a bit of
pain.
Discomfort, in the prostate area,
right,
or
nether
rectal
regions,
area, that we're able to put a moderately strong suppository that would then give relief in that specific area.
Well, you were kind enough to give my husband, John, some of your formulations. John just went through a shoulder replacement. And so sometimes he gets a little stubborn. You think, can I put this on? Okay, buck up, I'm a man. No, I'm fine. So I sort of just did it the other morning, and so this morning when he got up, he says, can you put some more on? It really felt good.
Well, yeah, I know. It's not just the feel-good part of it, but the
right.
penetration and the fact that it gets to the root of the problem. Of course, his problem was
right, but it made
mechanical.
Him,
he was repairing his shoulder, but
made him feel better.
It helps him heal.
Right. Just stop it.
Yeah. So the trick is, too, that using these cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids together is really important. And it's my involvement and my learning in it, my education, my hunger for information has really been using my pharmacy background in science and biology, botanicals, botany, to study it clear from the genetic strains, which have a large part to do with the amount of CBD that comes from the plant, but through the seed into the soil, where I've actually worked in the fields and just got back from Denver, where I was working with the extractors. These are the companies that take the raw plant, they call it the biomass, convert it through various extraction. Ethyl alcohol is the most popular and seems to give you the least amount of solvent residues. You don't want any solvents left in the final product. So they extract the raw material, and then, of course, taking it from the raw material to the formulation and to the manufacture of the product all the way to the shelf. So I kind of liken what I'm doing from seed to shelf, taking my pharmaceutical background in the manufacturing side too, to learn about this product and then be able to better make formulations that will create better health outcomes.
Right, to be more, because so many plants, it might be the same plant, but genetically if it's different, or it's, not all tomatoes taste alike, not all roses smell alike. And so being able to understand through your background what is the best seed to shelf, is that kind of like food to fork? Or farm
like
to fork?
That. About that, something like that.
Yeah, you could coin
it's
that.
through a whole, 6 or 7 step process that if you know them all, it helps maintain quality. And actually, look, when I was up there, I actually modified some of their C of A's, we call it, Certificate of Analysis, which every product that's made has to have one. And we added some categories to that would give you better measurement as to, for instance, the heavy metals that are in there or not in there. Mm-hmm. Those are already being tested for. The cannabinoid content is important. The heavy metals, I said, the solvents that are used. Some of them use really cheap solvents that are not totally evaporated or eliminated, that lessen the quality of the product. And you're putting a solvent on your skin. So I said most of our people are using ethyl alcohol, which they obviously boils off at a certain temperature. And then certain pesticides that we now have on the certificate of analysis that reflect if an herbicide has been used or a pesticide that has really not, it's still attaching to the molecule in the CBD. So, and one of them that I found they weren't even looking at was glyphosate. Glyphosate from Roundup has had such bad press finally. I mean, they've been kind of protecting Roundup as a major manufacturer in Monsanto.
Right.
But they have found 2 cancer awards here. They might be under appeal or something, big awards of $250 million, I think, to 2 different people here in California.
Right.
So we don't want that in any of our products. So now they'll be looking for it. There are specific ways to measure, test for that.
Let's get back to that after we come back. We're going to talk about the certification and is there something people should look for in that. Well, you're listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Self, and we'll be back with more about CBD. I think I'm getting it, with Paul Sullivan after these messages. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB, AM 1290, the News Press radio station. This is your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 and Sunday at 10 a.m. My guest today is Paul Sullivan, and we've been talking about his research and about the benefits of CBD. And we just left off. I hated to cut him off, but I wanted to be able to get into this topic about what these, what do we call them, cannabinoids are tested for. Right. And is there, like you see organic over everything. If you buy some, how do you know what certification it has, how good it is, or nothing now? Nothing yet?
You really have to do your research, and your research would be into the brands. So many brands have a lot of information online now that you can research as far as how their testing goes, and some of the better ones would even post, some of these lab reports online. This Theracream has been supplying that to various people upon request, the certification. Right. But so you have to trust the brand, And you have to trust the retailer that they're going to sell brands that they know are safe, that maybe the people make other products I've had for years. Because there are a lot of new entries into this marketplace. I'd say 95% of the companies that are in the business the last 2 years, the last 3 years would be, a lot of them are from Canada. And Canada approved cannabis long before we did. They have a big jump start on the United States.
Right.
As far as medical cannabis and CBD and all the medical benefits. But so you got to trust that it was a company maybe that, the way I explain it is, somebody that was into healthcare products before and now added CBD to a current product line.
Right.
Instead of somebody that says, oh my gosh, this is really hot, I can get into CBD and make a lot of money or get a lot of market share before a lot of other people get in it. And that's happened a lot. And I think that now some of these companies, for instance, when I was in Denver, up in kind of cannabis land, not just there, but I mean, I've been visited seed, actually breeders, they call them.
Like horses.
Yeah, seed breeders and geneticists up in Oregon. There's a lot of fine work going on up in Oregon. I was up in Bend for about 3 days visiting various fields and greenhouses, looking at how they do the kind of the seed genetics and how they perfect each strain. But over in the Denver area, where I was looking at the various companies that were manufacturing some of the extractors, the people that are pulling the final, or at least the cannabinoids, the CBD, out of the biomass, out of the raw hemp product. And one of them showed, one of the manufacturers I was in showed some CBD that had been delivered. It's the isolate product that was only 20% CBD instead of 99.5%. The rest of it was sugar because it's granular. So, and there's a lot of bad product coming in from China and India that is all very low grade or high in these solvents I talked about, high in pesticides that I talked about, high in heavy metals, arsenic and cadmium in particular. So you got to know what you're buying and where, particularly if it's for your health. And not only if you're putting it on your skin, but if you're taking it internally, with a tincture or with an oil. Tinctures and oils, they kind of talk about the same these days. It's drops in a bottle.
Right.
Tinctures used, in my definition, are alcohol-based.
Right.
Oils are not, but they're kind of generic. When they talk about tinctures, you might see them as oils or alcohol-based. Capsules, oral thin film strips that I've done some formulas in, which are like a Listerine strip, where we load it with CBD and some of the complementary terpenes. So you got to know where you're getting the product, in that you're not ingesting something intended for good health, where in fact is probably creating some toxicity.
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of scandals about product from China that's laced with something that's really terrible.
The term laced sounds intentional. I think it's carelessly in the product. I'm not even sure they know it at all times.
Yeah, I guess part of what I'm thinking about was the baby formula one, where it had, I think that was
melamine,
laced. Yeah, I think that was laced.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, whoops, it just happened to dump, and it ended up in Cadbury's chocolate. And this is something that it may say it's made in the United States, but you don't know where the ingredients came from.
That's right. Raw ingredients could come. And our labs up there, the labs I've used, have very heavy-duty analytical equipment. They call it high-performance liquid chromatography, HPLC. You recognize that?
Use it all the time.
Yeah, or mass spectrometry. Or sometimes our machine will combine them both. And they can look at it and see what pesticides are in there, if at all, and at what level. Because it could be acceptable by the FDA, say at 10 parts per million, but you're seeing, or 10 parts per billion, but you're seeing it, 5,000 parts per million. So it's a travesty to allow that. But some of these smaller, cheaper labs that are just more recent entries into CBD may not have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal, to buy that type of equipment. But I was in one lab, looked at it, and I was watching the guy read the graph And I said, what are you seeing there? And they said, we're seeing a lot of some pesticide. They call it a pentane base. And he said, we couldn't have seen that a year ago without this more sophisticated equipment. So what I was happy for as a pharmacist and a formulator, that my customers or any formulas that I did were safe when I used this company and this equipment, but feeling bad for other people that are buying unknowingly and getting this kind of toxicity level.
Yes. Well, you're listening to Voices of Santa Barbara with Michael Self at KZSB AM 1290. We'll be back with more about Paul and CBD after these messages. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm Michael Self, and a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again at 8, Saturday at 5 a.m., and Sunday at 10 a.m. My guest is Paul Sullivan. Okay, we only have a few moments, so can you tell us again about your product, where they can get it? Did you have some other that you are distributing in other places?
Well, the Theracream is, we have, I say, you can get it online if that's what you mean, at theracream.com. But we do have it around town at a number of places, but Skin Deep being one, Mary J. Mart downtown. It's a new store down the 400 block. San Ysidro Pharmacy, of course, and Montecito Grocery.
Okay.
And these people are selling it, I said, based on informing the customer, giving them the education they need to know the difference between hemp and marijuana or cannabis,
right,
and as well as the benefits of the product and how to apply it.
Yeah, I guess you see some time where an individual product will, say, have on its label somewhere where you get a gold star certification. That means it passes all the rigid tests about heavy metal solvents, and maybe that's something to push for. I'll help.
Well, I certainly am looking into that. I was looking for that when we were up in Denver on this kind of 3-day swing through 8 different manufacturers. And some of them had asked if there was any kind of certification coming out of pharmacy. I said, pharmacy is a little slow moving into this, cautious, I should say, because of the way it was scheduled as a drug.
Right.
The compound pharmacists are now looking at it very closely to be able to add it to a compounded prescription item that you might have for severe pain in the face or something like that. But the certification, no, the danger here is that even if it's organic, and they're only now coming out with organic, for some reason they're not able to detect the glyphosate. And the glyphosate, the danger in that is that it's not necessarily the glyphosate itself, but it's the surfactant they add to it. And a surfactant is like a soap. It's
to help it soak in.
Yeah, it breaks the oil up. If you had oil on top of water,
right,
you added a drop of soap, the oil would disperse.
Right.
So when you have that kind of activity on the skin where it's breaking the oil in the skin and allowing these really caustic ingredients to get into the body, it's lethal.
Well, even with organic, I understand there is some wiggle room there that they can call it organic, but you had this or did that, or there's a little wiggle room. But could you start your own certification?
Well, I'm looking at that. I am looking at that, and it really would be linked to pharmacy analytics, and be able to basically combine the rigors of pharmaceutical chemistry and pharmaceutical ingredients to what's evolving as a really exciting new application for a plant that's, thousands, if not millions of years old.
Banned for a long time.
Yeah, right, just banned, 40 years ago.
Let it out of the closet, and here it comes.
Yeah, that's right. And some people have been using it, obviously, even though it was banned.
Right.
As we know. But the hemp itself is where I'm really putting my emphasis where I really see the value. I'm not interested in the psychoactive part of the plant, which is very small anyway, the 0.3%. So it's exciting times for medicine, for patients, and for healthcare professionals.
Yeah, stress creates pain, and so if this helps, eat your chocolate and get your CBD.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for coming, Paul. I really appreciate all your expertise, and you're willing to share that with us. And thank you for listening.